Okay, I know it's been a while since you've dipped into poetry, all the way back to Emily Dickinson with those identity poems. Hey. But seeing as you just came off Julius Caesar, we're going to dip back into it with some Shakespearean poetry, which, has anybody read it? Anything poetry by Shakespeare before? No? Well, most of his poems are this special kind of poem called a sonnet. And we're going to get into exactly what a sonnet is in a second. But before we do that, dig back to memory. Do you remember when we did Emily Dickinson, we talked about the specific elements that we want to look for when we start analyzing a poem? Sorry guys, you're going to have to crane your necks here for a little bit. Yeah.
Excuse me, you ended up giving me just...
Oh, yeah, grab another one. That happens. Shared copy machine and whatnot.
Thank you.
There you go. Everybody else got the right one, right? All right, cool. What are some of the elements that we look for when we start to analyze poetry? Yeah, Jessica.
Repetition.
Repetition. All right, so that's an example of a type of what? No, think about it. If you've got repetition, maybe alliteration in there. Yeah, that's another example of what? Of what? Imagery. Imagery is one. Okay, we can throw imagery up there because that's very important, especially in this poem. But I'm thinking of a term, sort of an umbrella term for all those. It starts with an L. It's two words actually. Literary devices. That's what it is. Your literary devices, like similes and metaphors. Yeah, so you definitely want to keep an eye out for that. What else? What other stuff do we look for?
Phrasing.
Phrasing, all right. Yeah, that's very important. And think about an obvious one with poems that we're missing here. Generally, poems usually what? A lot of times.
Punctuation.
Punctuation's another good one. It's not what I was getting at, but
Rhyming.
Rhyming, that's the one. And that's very important in the sonnet that I'm about to get to. That falls under literary devices. Yeah. Let's see. There's at least one more that I'm looking for. What do we call it when you see a reference to something else in a text?
Allusion.
Allusion. Yeah, an allusion. And when you're reading Shakespeare, I know a lot of you guys from Julius Caesar, we were pointing out a lot of Greek references to Greek mythology. You'll see some biblical references and stuff that he does because living in England at the time that he did under Queen Elizabeth and King James, obviously a Christian society, you guys know that. So you see a lot of references to the Bible there. Anything else before we get going? All right, so keep these in mind as we're picking apart this sonnet. All right, so two types of sonnets generally that we look at. There's an Italian sonnet or Petrarchan sonnet, and then there's a Shakespearean sonnet or an English sonnet. Okay, this is obviously which of the two?
Shakespearean.
Yeah, Shakespearean. And the thing that differentiates them is they're sort of split up differently according to their rhyme scheme. So before I tell you exactly what that is, I'd like you to actually fill out the rhyme scheme if you can. Who remembers how to actually do the rhyme scheme? I know it's been a while since we did poetry, but it's done, well, for rhyme scheme generally, I mean, even think about Dr. Seuss, you're looking at what part of the line?
The end.
The end, yeah. So let's just look at that first one together. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? So you would label what at the end of that line? An A. Yes. You put an A, right? Because we do it by letters. And then thou art more lovely and more temperate. That doesn't rhyme with day, right? So you put what letter after it?
B.
B. All right. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May. What do you put? A. Right. And summer's leaf hath all too short a date.
B.
B. Yep. And you continue down. So the next one's going to be a different letter, right? Because yes. All right. So go through and do that, and I will bet hard money that you are going to see a pattern. job, guys. Memory is serving you well. All right, good, good, good. The frequent mistake that a lot of people make with rhyme scheme is they'll just repeat the A, B, A, B, A, B, just because it happens to be an alternating rhyme scheme like this one. But I see you guys trumped that and started using the different letters too. Because once a word like day, once we get that A sound, we label the letter A with that, right? So unless it ends with that A sound, like day, then it's going to get a different letter. So good. So what do you notice here? What's the pattern that's going on, John?
Well, the first and the third line repeat, and the second and the fourth repeat, rhyme together. And then it kind of goes down that same pattern as it keeps going down.
Yeah, it does. So it's really in blocks of, if we talk about each alternating line rhyming, it's sort of in blocks of what? Of how many lines like correspond together? Huh? 4. Yes, 4. Who knows what that's called in poetry?
Quad something?
Yes, that's what I was just going to say. Think about the Latin roots there. It is qua something. Qua, you know, qua is the Latin root for 4, right? It's called a quatrain. A quatrain. Is that, you were, that was very good. Those group of 4 lines that coordinate. That's a quatrain. So we have how many quatrains going down here in this?
2. 3.
Count again. 3.
Oh, 3.
3. And then what do we have at the very end there? You definitely know the name of this one. I'm not going to tell you. No, those last 2 lines. They're different, aren't they? GG at the end there. Here, why don't we read the rhyme scheme out loud? Elise, why don't you read yours? Just go down and read the letters.
A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, G, G.
Okay, so every time she goes A, B, that's a, what was the word?
A quatrain.
A quatrain, that's 4. So C, D, that's another quatrain, right? E, F, there's our third one. And then we have that GG at the end. What do we call those 2 lines that go together? 2 lines.
Couplet.
A couplet, yes, good job. So that is the pattern. Whenever we're reading a Shakespearean sonnet, you are going to see that it has 14 lines, and it goes quatrain, 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 couplet. All right, this is the pattern. This is what makes it an English sonnet, a Shakespearean sonnet. He wrote 154 of these, and they all follow this sort of structure. They're also, who remembers the type of language that he usually writes with the stress on every other syllable? What's that called?
Prose?
Accent.
Well, it has to do with the accent, but as far as...
Old English?
Huh?
Old
It's not Old English, it's more Middle English, but it has to do with the syllables that are accentuated.
It was in that presentation, and I remember one of them was prose, and there was another one that was it.
It has to do with the syllables, with when certain syllables are emphasized. For example, if we read this first line, this iconic first line.
Iambic pentameter.
There it is.
Yay.
Nice, good job. Now, what's that mean?
It's supposed to mimic the beating of the heart or something.
Well, it has to do with every other syllable being emphasized. All right. So if we're reading that first line, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? First of all, who's heard that line before? Yeah. It's pretty iconic. I mean, it's right up there with Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo, to be or not to be, as far as famous Shakespearean lines go. That's right up there. This is a very famous love poem that he wrote. So if we're using iambic pentameter, where every other syllable is emphasized, you can put, what's the mark where you do for emphasis? People who take Spanish. It's a little accent mark, all right? So if you were to do this over that first line, it would be emphasized, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? All right, the fact that every other line, if you put an accent over every other syllable there, that's iambic pentameter, okay? It should look familiar to you guys. I know we talked about that with Caesar. But anyway, so we wrote 154 of these, and a lot of them, they're not so separate. A lot of them are written to the same individual. So they do correlate, but this is a famous one that really sticks out. So what we're going to do is we're going to do that first quatrain together as a group, and then we're going to split into pairs, and there's going to be some of you who are doing quatrain 2, some of you who are doing quatrain 3, 2, 3, 2, 3. We'll come back, we'll talk about it, and then that last couplet is very, 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 very important. So we're going to respond to that at the end. We'll do it separate and then together. So it really wraps the whole thing up. I think you guys are really going to like this. And I know we had a little language issue with Caesar too, but this is, I feel like you'll find for Shakespeare that the language is very simplified. Not necessarily the complicated Shakespeare that I know a lot of you fear. So don't panic. But let's look at that first line together. Actually, why don't we read the whole poem out loud first? Why don't we have John do that?
Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe, or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee.
Very good, John. Very good. We notice how the language isn't too terribly difficult. You're not tripping over it too much. All right, so that's very good. So let's start with that famous opening line, all right? If we're looking at punctuation here, punctuation, what's at the end of that line?
Question.
A question mark. Did you notice that as you go down here, all of the lines have some sort of punctuation at the end? A lot of those lines stand alone, which is interesting. But yeah, so it's a question. All right, that first line is a question, and who is it posed to? Look at your pronouns there.
I.
Why you?
Because this is thou.
What's it say?
Thou.
Look again. What's the pronoun there? Shakespearean pronoun. Not thou, you were close.
Art.
Oh, no, you were close with thou. Think of the TH. Thee, yeah, thee, which means you. You were close there, John. Yeah, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? So what's the paraphrasing there?
You. Shall I compare you to a summer's day?
Yeah, it's pretty much in layman terms there, right? Shall I compare you to a summer's day? So what is this speaker, what is this narrator about to do?
Like, compare you to a summer's day.
Yeah, compare his beloved to a summer's day. This pretty much sets you up so you know everything that's coming after it. Think of this as kind of the thesis statement. You know, when you write your essays, you have your thesis statement to let your reader know what's coming next. That's basically, this is Shakespeare's thesis statement here. So you know what's going on, all right? So this is going to be kind of a comparison piece. Thou art more lovely and more temperate. And then we have what punctuation at the end there? Colon. What does temperate mean?
Like not too hot, not too cold.
Yeah, sort of mild, very reliable, controlled. Yes, yeah, that's good. So where summer can be maybe what? So if he's saying that she's mild, what does that say about summer? Drastic, extremes, yeah? And he gives you some examples of some extremes in the next two lines. Annabella, why don't you look at those for us?
Well, it talks about like the rough winds, and I don't understand that next line.
Do shake the darling buds of May.
Yeah.
All right, so darling buds, those are what?
Flowers.
Flowers, yeah. So they got rough winds shaking up all the flowers, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Okay, summer's lease. Who knows what lease means in that sentence?
Like rent?
Well, that's actually interesting that you draw that comparison. So if you're signing a lease on a house,
If you own it but you don't really own it.
It's temporary.
Yeah, it's sort of temporary, right? So that's exactly what this line is saying. Summer's
Leasing
lease.
a car.
Yeah, you lease the car too. So, but that only lasts if you're leasing a car, you don't own it, right? So you only have it for a short period of time.
So summer's only allowed for a short period of time, and
Right.
it's too short.
Yes, it's too short. All right, it ends, which this narrator isn't too happy with. So what sort of imagery are we seeing here, related to what?
Summer.
Very romantic way. Well, summer, which by extension is part of
The year.
flowers, spring. These are all parts of what?
Season.
Seasons, which is a part of an overall
Year.
Romance.
Life.
Mother
Nature.
Yes, nature. You remember we did that poem when we were talking about nature imagery, and you did that whole, you had to write your own poem with the extended metaphor. this is basically that same thing, all right? You have an extended nature metaphor here, which is that's what you're going to see throughout the rest of it. So he keeps comparing his beloved to nature, all right? That's basically the gist of this poem. So I want you to apply that. I'm going to split you into pairs. So why don't we have you do quatrain 2, you two are doing quatrain 3, quatrain 2, quatrain 3, quatrain 2, and you can do quatrain 3. All right, so I want you to take maybe 3 to 5 minutes, somewhere in there. I'll come around and see how you guys are doing. And I want you to try to, with those themes that we established in the first stanza, hold on, don't break yet. Those themes that we established in the first stanza, so the fact that it's a comparison piece, the fact that you're going to see an extended nature metaphor here, I want you to try to pick that apart, and don't forget that we wrote on the board. You see a literary device, I want you to point out what exactly is it. You see an allusion to a different text, underline it, all right? Note the punctuation, note the phrasing, describe the imagery. Take 5 minutes to really pick apart the quatrain that I just gave you. All right? You have the tools, now use them.
It's all like yeah.
Make sure you're looking at the right part. Remember the letters we give and determine the quatrain that you're looking at.
But summer doesn't really last forever. It does, but like it repeats.
Like,
Sometimes I mean, yeah. And he's mean that sometimes he gets too much. And she won't, so summer was the day. Okay, so something that's it's like, it's saying like, you're in grade 2, lower, like, someone is lessons, and by chance or nature, it's basically saying that, like, sometimes you can.
If you hear that somebody, think about a double meaning with the word fair there. What's another, besides like fair meaning like just, what's another meaning for that word that you've heard before? Think about it maybe describing a woman.
It's saying sometimes the sun is too hot and sometimes.
You heard it used as like a princess to describe a
Fair maiden.
fair maiden, that's the phrase I was looking for, yeah. Yeah, like a fair, so think of it in that way and the line will be a little bit more clear.
like,
It's like as something goes along, perhaps more loose possession of that fair maiden is basically our actions. Like, as you're a good person, but something bad, and your reflection or personality or like whatever you're remembered by your legacy is, and you're and then you just decline the person.
That's they are related. So you're going to figure out what the I heaven is before you jump down to the next one. What the I heaven would be. Think about, we're talking about nature, right? Think about on a literal level. If you look up what's the eye in the sky. Yeah. All right. So now think about the sun. How does that change what the next line is?
the sun is too hot.
Because we were talking about, what were we talking about with the rough wind and the fact that because in the last song we were talking about the word Annabella used, it was extremes, right? So how does that, if you're connecting the extremes to this line about the sun?
It says
The sun, maybe like.
Think about it. The word two,
I think it means
that means an extreme, right?
after
Something
death.
too much or too much of it.
Yeah.
So What? How are
So
those?
often, like as it goes throughout the day, it will continue to glow less.
We'll paraphrase this first line for me. If this is the sun, right? What is paraphrase that for me?
It's too hot.
Yeah, sometimes the sun's too hot.
Yeah.
And then how is that next line related?
It often is do something to prevent it, maybe to lessen its power, maybe.
Close. Yeah, close. This is.
You will grow with time.
What's it referring to there?
Sun.
The sun. Yeah. So sometimes it's too hot, but
And
then
maybe
often
when you put
his
on
complexion
sunglasses
is
or
dim.
something like that.
They didn't have sunglasses.
Yeah, I know,
right?
but it's like a protection from the sun to help them to get away from it. Maybe.
He's talking about. Remember, he's talking about
Sometimes like it goes, like it gets cloudy.
Yes, that's
Oh,
exactly
Like
right.
and then that's kind of like fair to fair. Like how sometimes it's really hot, but then some days it's really cool from the clouds.
That's spot on.
By
By
chance,
chance or
nature
nature.
change, so it can always change.
That's spot on.
North shall.
I put you guys on 3, right? You guys have 3. Take about 2 more minutes, maybe a little less, to gather your thoughts and make sure you have a good hold on your quatrain, and then you're going to talk about it.
Well, I think
Okay, how's it going? Yeah.
maybe it means death.
Okay, good. That's the first step to breaking that quatrain and figuring out that.
I was about to go see the King's King. Is it good?
Yes, because we were talking about extremes, right? So how does this line about the sun reflect
I don't know, I was
extremes
like, if I'm supposed to
about it? Yeah, definitely heat. Because what does it say? Sometimes too hot, too hot. And then how is that next line contrast with that? Yes, yeah. So he's talking about some of the not good aspects of something. How's this going, girls? You're on question 3?
Yeah.
Alright. We'll start from the top and strong up. From you. You guys got to this is a big turning point in our home here, alright? Think about your front, but the thigh, thigh there.
Maybe when maybe since
Yes,
she's
referring to his
eternal.
beloved that he's talking to, yeah.
And
So
when
the thigh
he
is
dies,
what does that mean to you to like paraphrase that?
I don't know.
Watch me see it.
Thy
I
eternal,
don't.
your eternal summer.
Back again.
Okay, so
There's not really much
Yes, that was pretty spot on between that and what you annotated there. Yeah, you're right. You're not nearly as lost as you think you are. You're on the right track here. So nor possession of that fair thou owest. Think about that word's got a couple different meanings. That's the hint that I'll give you. So think about it. Think about it. And we'll come back in 1 minute. How about you guys? Yeah.
Ryan.
You're on 2, right? Okay.
no, but I think
Yeah.
both
Yeah.
are the same thing. It's a pretty big
Just
thing.
figure out what this is.
Yeah.
Alright, and once you crack that, the
Let's
rest
just
of
read it all
it
together.
is
North shall
substantially easier.
It's shade.
Alright, take about 30 more seconds to wrap up. Make sure you're writing your thoughts down because everyone needs to pitch into this conversation.
Evil. Their love will keep growing.
How are we wrapping up over here, guys?
We're just talking about Norshaw's album and she.
That's what kind of, if we're looking at literary devices, what do you think that is? Nor shall death crag.
Even if he dies, they will still.
Yes, personification, that's exactly right. Yeah,
No, it's not.
that's spot on. So what is he? So death is bragging, right?
Yes, but we're not
Did you see it?
Well, like I think when it was longer than the shade, that means she's dead.
Right, yes, exactly.
So he would not brag
My first one was pretty good.
Yeah,
because she is everlasting summer.
good job. Spot on. All right, let's bring it back.
See it?
Bring it back, bring it back. Okay, obviously we're going to start with quatrain 2, so raise your hand if you were on quatrain 2. Alright, cool. Why don't we start with you two? Start us with that first line.
Okay, do you want us to read the whole thing?
Yeah, why don't you read the whole thing back, yeah.
Okay, sometime too hot, the eyes of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dim, and every fair from fair sometimes declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. Okay, so we saw, for the first line, sometime too hot, the eye of heaven shines, we saw that that was the sun, and
What was the sun?
the eye of heaven.
The eye of heaven, yeah.
And it shines too hot, and like often its gold complexion is dimmed, but that means like also could be literal with clouds changing its amount of light.
So connect that to what Annabella was saying before, what we saw with rough winds and summer sleep.
It's all nature.
Yeah, the extremes, these extreme points of nature, how summer can fluctuate in very unexpected ways and unpleasant ways sometimes. Continue.
And then, and every fair, from fair sometimes declines, like, it could be really hot one day, like the sun will shine really hot one day, or it can change, it can change to like really cool, or like
Depending
with
on,
clouds.
depending by chance or like nature's, or Mother Nature doing it.
Yes, that's exactly.
Winds can have an effect on it, and clouds and everything else.
Yes, nature's changing course. You had that exactly right. Nature can change in these really unpredictable ways, right? But the word that I really want to focus on here, that I know I was helping a couple of you with before, is that word fair, right? Fair. What is that? Give me some. Shakespeare has some double meanings in a couple words here, and we're going to get into it as we go down to quatrain 3 too. But that word fair, what are some meanings for it, Stephanie?
Beautiful.
Beautiful, yes, that's one. So if you're reading a fairy tale and they describe the princess like fair skin or fair maiden, all right, very beautiful and sort of light. You picture maybe kind of delicate complexion, maybe. Yeah. What's another meaning for it?
Like a good heart.
Yes, yes, yes. That's right. Especially in like a just way. Yeah, definitely, Cammie.
Neutral.
Neutral, I guess that ties, yeah, I guess that ties kind of into just. Think about connecting it back to nature. In what way do you hear the word fair applied to nature in any way? No? Nobody? Who's heard the expression fair weather, like a fair weathered fan?
He's only likes a team or something when it's good, when they're like having luck or his experience.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So if that's described as a fair weathered fan, like Harrison said, if you just like a team because they're doing well, like if all of a sudden there's all these Duke fans now that Duke won, the tournament. So fair weathered fan.
Maybe it's like you just like a flower or something because it's beautiful or something.
Yeah, like liking something just because it's beautiful. So the word fair is a good or a bad phrase here?
Good.
Good, yeah, fair. All right, so we've got it both describing what the beauty of his beloved, and then he ties it back again with the weather, with the nature, right? So he's got this dual meaning thing going on that he repeats again a little further down. That's really good. Who's got other things that they want to add to quatrain number 2? Anybody? No? Oh, yes.
Maybe because I have quadrant 3, but kind of like what ties in with quadrant 3. Maybe his gold complexion dimmed. Maybe that's him. Like kind of like his soul was like a little bit dimmed.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because I think the reason why you're saying that is because of that pronoun there. Pronouns are important in this poem. So that pronoun there, his, what is his referring to?
The eye of heaven.
Yeah, the eye of heaven, which was the sun. All right, so that's what, if we're looking at those lines together, sometimes too hot, the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dim. That's talking about not the narrator, that's talking about the sun, right? So it is talking about those extremes, where sometimes it's too hot, sometimes it's too dim, right? And here, quatrain 3, that's where we start to talk. So we've talked about all the extremes of weather, right? How summer can be so unpredictable. But this is a turning point. Why, having just looked at quatrain 2, why is quatrain 3 a turning point, John?
Because Shakespeare leans more away from the nature part and the symbolism of, and the more symbolism of how she connects to nature, and more he talks about how she is forever.
Yes, the focus shifts from the weather over to the beloved herself. All right, and we can see that you're going to want to put a star next to the end of that line, because that is a really big turning point there. And no, but thy eternal summer shall not fade. And what, if we're looking at phrasing or punctuation there, what is our tip-off that that this is a turning point, John? But, that's, yes, very important. That's a big one right there. And then also the pronoun that he uses there.
Thy.
Thy, yeah, meaning you, all right? But thy eternal summer shall not fade. So the nature metaphor continues, just like I promised it would. Who had quatrain 3? Raise your hand. All right, Josh, why don't you read quatrain 3 for us, and then your group can take a stab at interpreting it for us.
Sure. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou oust, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest.
All right, good job. So let's look at that first line. Give me a paraphrase of "But thy eternal summer shall not fade."
That it's saying she shall not fade from his love or heart, and she should not go away, and she is forever.
Yeah.
She will always be there.
So this, comparing it to the extremes that we saw in those first couple quatrains, and looking at this, so we have summer that's always changing, and then what's the statement that he's now making about his beloved?
She will always be forever. She's forever.
Yeah, so her eternal summer, which could also be phrased as her what? Charlotte, I know you were talking about this a little bit.
Her immortality.
Her immortality, her beauty, maybe this isn't going to go away. Everything that's good about her is not going to go away, like everything with summer is constantly changing and not temperate, right? And that second line sort of continues off it. Nor lose possession of that fair thou owest. That's owest. So let that sort of help guide your meaning there. What's that line talking about? Jessica?
Beauty.
Her beauty. Yes, that's right. Because we've got that word. What word repeats that we just talked about?
Fair.
Fair. Yeah. Nor lose possession of that fair thou owest. Her beauty. It's not going away. All right. Everything good about her. Is he saying that it's going to be short-lived or that it's going to last forever?
Last forever.
Yes, that's right. And he's going to tell you just exactly how it's going to last forever as we go further down. This line's very important here. Nor shall death brag, thou wanderest in his shade. Josh, I know we were talking about this over there with your group.
Yeah.
What, if we're looking at literary devices, what's showing up there?
Personification.
Why is it personification?
Because death really doesn't brag, and bragging is a human.
Yeah.
Death is not.
Exactly. So personification is putting these human traits within human things, right? So death, not a human thing. Can death actually brag?
No.
No. But he doesn't say death is going to brag. He says, nor shall death brag, thou wanderest in his shade. What about that end of that line there? Wanderest in his shade. What's that mean, Annabella?
That means there will never be a time where you will be under the command of, you won't die basically. He's saying that there will never be a time where death will have hold of you, have a grip over you, something like that.
That's exactly right. No, that's exactly what he's saying. And it also is one of these other things right here, an allusion. It's an allusion to something. It's not an exact phrasing, but I want you to think about what I said at the beginning, that based on the time and the place that Shakespeare was writing, something that he more than likely would be referring to.
Greek mythology.
Oh, not quite. The Bible. Yeah, the Bible. All right. Yeah, that's a reference to the Bible. Has anyone heard the phrase before, "As I walk through the valley of the shadow of death"? All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's Psalm 23, okay, and it talks about not being afraid as you go to die. And it's something the passage that Shakespeare definitely would have known. Fun fact, Shakespeare, who were the two monarchs that he was under when he was writing? Elizabeth was the first one, and then she died. Who replaced him? Her. Yeah, King James, all right? The Bible that we use, it's called King James Bible, all right? And it's something that King James sort of made the Bible his own in a lot of ways. And so this is something that Shakespeare would have very, very much been, you know, aware of. He would have known that he was sort of referring to this there as an allusion, all right? So, nor shall death brag, thou wanderest in his shade. Okay, so you hit that right on the head, Annabelle. You want to repeat that?
What part?
The paraphrasing the line.
Oh, okay. So it's basically saying that you will never have, no, death will never like have both of you. You'll never be it.
Yeah, she'll never die, which the reason I'm emphasizing that is because that's very important coming into these last couplets here. Let's look at the last line of quatrain 3. When in eternal lines to time thou growest. Give me something. Yeah.
Well, time, it's on an by eternal line. It's just unbreakable. It's always going to keep going the way it is, as it is eternal. And you will grow with it.
You got the meaning right. Let's look at the imagery a little bit, John Kane.
Their love will keep growing.
Yes, the love will keep growing, but look what's the noun in that sentence? When in eternal lines to time thou growest. What's the first noun there?
Lines.
Lines, all right? Lines of what?
5 people? Maybe time. Like.
Well, lines of time. This is another dual meaning here, so I'll take 2 answers. I can hear at least one of them. Yeah. Huh?
Love.
Love.
Maybe
Think of something that actually is lines. Don't.
Descendants of people, like one line of a family.
Oh, you're thinking like bloodlines. Think about what you're actually looking at right now. What are you actually looking at?
Poems, like lines and poems.
Lines of poetry. Yeah, exactly. When in eternal lines to time thou growest. So this poem is, as you go down a line every time, the poem is technically what? If you cover up this poem, right, and you gradually drag your hand down to reveal more of it, it's growing, all right? So with every line, this poem is growing, just like his love is growing, right? What's another line that maybe start to appear as you get older?
Like frown lines?
Wrinkles, yeah,
Oh.
frown lines, well that too. If you're just generally an unhappy person, you're frowning a lot, then yeah, as you get older, that's gonna. Yeah, so another dual meaning there, all right? We've got wrinkles and the lines of the poetry. That's the really important one because that feeds right into this last couplet. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. All right, this sums up the whole thing. I'm going to read that one more time before I set you off on what you're going to do next. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. It has to do with that buzzword you said before. What was that?
Immortal.
Yes. So here's what I want you to do. Just individually take 1 minute, and I'd like you to, actually we can take more than that. We've got a little bit of time. To respond to that, what you think that last couplet means in relation to everything that's said before. So you can start with maybe a paraphrase, but you have to tie it back into all the themes that we just talked about, okay?
Sentence.
Yeah, just write, 1, 2, 3 sentences. I just want you to respond to it and figure out what you think it means in relation to the poem as a whole. And also what it means on its own. I mean both here. So if you can do that in 1 sentence, great. 2 sentences, probably. 3 sentences, good for you. All right, and then we'll bring it back and we'll discuss it in these last couple minutes here. Take about 1 more minute just to jot down your initial thoughts. Maybe a little less.
I wrote a really big run-on sentence. Should I just fix it?
I'm not going to collect it, so
Okay.
okay. Alright, wrap it up. As people say stuff that you haven't written yet, you can obviously jot it down next to that last couplet. So what do we have here? Charlotte, you had your pencil down. Let's see, what's your initial impression of that line?
Of the couplet?
Yes, of the couplet, yeah.
So long as men can breathe, their eyes can see. He's talking about as long as they're, like, basically are humans. So long lives this, which is, I think, is referencing back to the lines. The poetry.
Spot on.
And this gives life to use. The poetry gives life, and then I was kind of, you said that Greek mythology could kind of be referenced, sort of, right? So,
it could be.
I don't know, that kind of reminded me of the muses, especially like the muse of poetry,
Oh.
which is something that would fit, I think, because it's immortal, and that was just my impression.
That is a very good parallel there. Yeah, and you got that right. So I'm glad that you, again, pronouns, very important. The this there, that's what I was very happy that you latched on to. The this is tying into that last line of quatrain 3 about the poem as a whole. So yes, as long as the poem exists and people are around to read it, then what? What's the outcome here?
Their life will.
Yeah, what's immortal?
Their love. For her.
Their love, her, his description of her, right? You describe someone so lovingly. Which, think about it, isn't that kind of true? I mean, this was written in like 15 or 16, I think it's 16, late or early 1600s, all right? So that's 400 years ago, okay? And it's still, we're still reading this. Like I said, very immortal words. The first line is, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? All right, so this essentially is lasting forever, right? What does that say about words and about text and literature and things that we write in general?
It's forever. Like,
It is forever.
It leaves an imprint.
It does leave an
Has a
imprint.
legacy.
Same thing with
Yes.
texting.
This has an asylum.
Texting, yes, because the NSA is collecting everything that you write, and it will last forever in the databanks of the CIA. No, that's a really good statement. It's not going to go away. What you write matters, and it sticks around, and it makes an impression. And obviously, if you have someone professing their romantic love in such a beautiful way, this is a beautiful thing that can last forever. All right, so that sort of self-expression, it matters, and you write it down, and it sticks around. All right. Does anyone have any last-minute questions about this? I think you did a really, really good job with it. See, the language wasn't that scary, right? We got through it. Good job. All right. Well, remember what Mrs. Beagle told you at the beginning of class. And thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Crew.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.